In a historic change of pace from the last month where we still had historic moments every single day, we had a historic vote today removing Kevin McCarthy as Speaker of the House, 216 to 210. So we'll talk about what's happening, what this means, some of the cope that's going on with that, and where this started. In other news, Dianne Feinstein passes away, leaving a Senate vacancy to be filled by Gavin Newsom, and he has tapped somebody already. He can only outleft the far left, so we'll be seeing what's happening with that and where that goes and what we do from that. Donald Trump and company are found liable for fraud in lawsuit, and in an exciting turn of events, it turns out that most everything on that is deemed as, well, crap. It's past the statute of limitations, so we'll go over what that means, what's happening there, and what we do with that. And the Philadelphia DA refiles charges against a cop who shot a man hours after a traffic stop, causing riots that are now causing the far-left DAs to go after people who are riding on the streets. What interesting times we live in indeed. It is going to be all of this and more. I was looking for a place called Lee Ho Fook's. Gonna get myself a big old dish of beef chow mein. I am Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary. Good Lord, folks, I leave for a month so I can recollect my thoughts, gather up a little bit of overtime, try to change a little bit of my life around because I do need to do some changes outside of Contemporary, and try to set it up so I can be a much more successful streamer and possibly get myself back to that early morning commute stream. And guys, you wrecked the country. Well, not really wreck the country. There have been some ups and some downs, but as the title suggests of this particular episode, I mean, can we have one day that is not absolutely historic? Just, can we have one? Please? Maybe? Somebody? Bueller? Hello? Anybody? It's a bit of insanity to come out and see just how much historic that we missed over the last month. And I mean, there were a few days where I almost jumped up and said, hey, we got to come back out and stream because this is important. But my month off was fantastic. I got a lot done over the winter. Once the snow flies, I'll be signing up to do some kickboxing here in town to see if we can't trim up the old pregnant belly coming off of here. But I mean, I climbed a mountain on Sunday. So some of the training that I've been doing while I was off camera, it started to pay off. I'm very proud of what happened over this past Sunday and what we've done here. I've done some game streaming to come and try to remind you guys that I'm here and that I'm still alive and make sure that I'm out there. And the news stops for nobody. So the thing with what we're doing here now is, and I noticed this when I was filling things up, it seems to be less repetitive to do a weekly stream than a daily stream, because especially with the way that they run the news right now, I mean, oh, they're gonna indict him, oh, they indicted him, oh, he had to go get arrested, and I mean, that's where a lot of the news follows at this point. But we're here, we've got a lot to talk about here. There are going to be some more changes that are coming up as we go, by the way, because I got sick of Streamlabs OBS today. Today was the day that I hit my breaking point. I was trying to set up these scenes that I had set up over the month break so that we actually have some transitions between topics. And just because of the fact that they took away my studio mode, they're going to be ousted here. I don't have my new encoder set up all the way yet, so we'll have to bear through with what we have for now. But yeah, I'm going to be changing that so we have a little bit more production value here as well. But that's enough behind the scenes stuff. We've got news to talk about over here on Contemporary, so strap yourselves in, get some friends, call some people over here. We're going to talk about the news, what's happening there, and what this is for the country. As always, I do check in with live chat, sometimes between topics, sometimes mid-topic. So if you've got something to say about the particular story on hand, you can say it out loud in. Unless, of course, it's bannable on YouTube, we'll get it read out on the air, so get it up there. I'll answer questions. I'll read what it is that you have to say. Again, I do know what's bannable on YouTube, so do keep that in mind. And if you did say something bannable, you will hear this sound. Yeah, that's going to get me banned. Sorry, that's not going to happen. But I'll still acknowledge that you're there. And let's get started with the news. Even though I don't have my transition card set up right now, I can still say what we're going to have here. We are not going to start with finance today, by the way. No finance to start off with here, because that's something for a daily show. We're not doing a daily show anymore. We are doing a weekly show. So we are going to start with historic votes. Let's get into it. Kevin McCarthy, as Speaker, has been ousted in a historic vote. Now, this follows, of course, a train of thought that started all the way back after 14 tries to get him elected as the Speaker, given the fact that one of the conditions to Kevin McCarthy being the Speaker was that only one person could call for his ouster. That person, of course, was Representative Matt Gaetz of Florida. Now, I mean, we've all looked at Matt Gaetz. We've all seen what his picture looks like over here. I'm pretty sure that Matt Gaetz looked across Congress and said, "You're not the Speaker anymore." That was cool. Alright, let's get the live chat up here so I can see what you guys are doing over here. A few people watching over on Rumble. Feel free to chime in over on the Rumble side. You won't see your chats pop up on the screen, but I will acknowledge them as well. Over on the YouTube side, or the main channel side, nobody's popped in. I thought for sure we'd see Mogwai by this point. Alright, from NBC News today, Scott Wong, Ali Vitali, Kyle Stewart, and Sahil Kapoor reporting. The House of Representatives on Tuesday took the unprecedented step of ousting a Speaker from office nearly 9 months after Kevin McCarthy won the powerful gavel in a dramatic 15-round floor fight. The vote was 216 to 210 to topple the California Republican, that should have been your first clue that something was wrong right there, the California Republican, who continued to insist to the bitter end that he would never give up after the vote. The office of the Speaker of the House and the second rung on the ladder in the succession to the U.S. presidency was declared vacant. Just like Kevin McCarthy's eyes, all 208 Democrats teamed up with just 8 GOP rebels to vacate the Speaker's chair, the first time in U.S. history that lawmakers have formally voted to remove a sitting Speaker in the middle of the term, and an overwhelming number of Republicans, 210, voted to keep McCarthy in power because he goes right along with their neocon agenda. I will remind you, of course, that if this person is in the government, this person is not your friend, no matter how much they try to make you believe that they are your friend, that they have your best interest at heart. I've been calling out a lot of bullshit on that for years. But it was not enough to stop the effort led by Matt Gaetz, who for weeks accused McCarthy of breaking his promises to conservatives to cut spending. Again, if cutting spending is your standard for whether or not you're going to keep a Speaker in the House, well, I'm going to tell you right off the bat that you're going to start to see a lot of people file in and out of that particular office because, well, let's be serious. There's enough of a coalition and there are enough entrenched people in this government that are going to come in and sign and push whatever it is that Joe Biden wants because they don't care about the party that they're in, they care about power. The Republicans are not fiscal. They have never been. Matt Gaetz is trying. He's failing, but he is trying. We heard Speaker McCarthy say that he wanted us to bring it on, so I guess we did, Gates told reporters after a successful vote. The historic vote threw the GOP-controlled House into chaos. As opposed to what? It's been chaos for 250 years. As lawmakers struggle to figure out what to do next, the House is now in recess, while members huddle behind closed doors to plot a path forward. The session ended with another surprise. It was announced that the Financial Services Chair, Patrick McHenry, a top McCarthy ally, is now the Speaker pro tempore. Put on a secret list McCarthy provided to the clerk in January in the event of a vacancy. After assuming the Speaker's chair, where he'll serve in an interim capacity, McHenry slammed down the gavel in anger. Careful with that, that's wood, that'll explode in your face. You know what, never mind, forget I said anything on that one. Before the vote, the parade of top McCarthy allies rose to speak in favor of keeping McCarthy. House GOP Conference Chair Elise Stefanik called McCarthy a happy warrior who has uniquely American grit, while Representative Garrett Graves of Louisiana plays him as the greatest speaker in modern history. Simp much? In modern history, jeez. Kevin McCarthy isn't even the greatest speaker of my lifetime. And that's not a very high bar to clear. We had Boehner, of all people, be the Speaker of the House. And Boehner didn't get some sense in his head until he vacated the office of the House, until he just came up and said, I resign. And then he kind of turned into a little bit of a stoner and kind of an anti-government person, oddly enough. So there is that aspect of things. I recognize that my friends on the other side have a very complex set of partisan, personal, and political calculations to make, and I certainly wouldn't presume to give them any advice about that. Rules Chairman Tom Cole of Oklahoma, a top McCarthy ally who tried to unsuccessfully block Gates' effort, warned on the floor before the vote. But I would say, think long and hard before you plunge us into chaos, because that's where we're headed if we vacate the speakership. Cole received big applause and a standing ovation from almost the entire GOP side of the chamber as he finished speaking. Gates countered from the Democratic side of the aisle because Republicans had blocked him from the 3 GOP microphones on the floor. Chaos is Speaker McCarthy. Chaos is someone who we cannot trust with their word, Gates said, retorting Cole. I don't think voting against McCarthy is chaos. I think $33 trillion in debt is chaos. I think that facing a $2.2 trillion annual deficit is chaos. For weeks, Gates had threatened to call a vote to expel McCarthy if he had passed a short-term government funding bill, relying on Democratic votes. When McCarthy did just that last weekend to avert a shutdown, Gates moved against him. Under House rules, McCarthy had until Wednesday to take up the resolution that Gates, a conservative Florida Republican and Donald Trump loyalist, yeah, they're going to throw that on him too, filed Monday night, but McCarthy and his allies moved to rip off the Band-Aid and quickly take on the so-called motion to vacate that has consumed the Capitol. I get politics, I understand where people are, McCarthy told reporters, but he added, I truly believe the institution of the House, at the end of the day, if you throw a speaker out that has 99% of their conference, that kept government open and paid the troops, I think that we're in a really bad place. So there is a lot of stuff that's moving on this. And again, we will study what's happened and what brought us to this at this point. But where we are at right now, there are a few things to pay attention to. Number one, it took over a month to get McCarthy into the Speaker's chair. Remember, it took 15 votes to get him there. And that did involve getting Matt Gaetz coming on board, because you do not have a lot of votes to lose in the Republican conference. 209 that's the number of Democrats that are in here. So there's a chance that this is going to take a while again, and I don't know who actually it is that's going to stand up, that's going to get everybody on board, because, well, let's face it, it's on the Republican conference to come up and nominate whoever's going to be the Speaker. It's on them. and then we sit here and we have a vote. Now, of course, there's the cope going on now. It's going to be Hakeem Jeffries is going to be the speaker now because we can get a bipartisan group and coalition together to vote for him. I think there's a possibility that the next Speaker of the House is a Democrat, but I don't think it's going to be that Democrat. They're also putting forward the name of Liz Cheney because, remember, the Speaker of the House does not have to be a sitting member of the House of Representatives right now. But the more important thing to look at here, number one, the impeachment inquiry is officially paused because the leader of the impeachment inquiry can't lead the impeachment inquiry. That was a Kevin McCarthy job. That's paused. Not that that's really going to go anywhere. That's one thing you've got to keep in mind with that one is that was for show anyway, because that goes to the Senate and, oh, sorry, we don't like your proposition, so we're just going to vote to acquit right here and now. But our government shutdown was also only averted for 45 days. There needs to be a speaker in place. The pro tempore cannot bring a spending bill to the floor. Essentially, the pro tempore, the only thing that he can do is bring to the floor the votes to bring up another speaker. The House is stopped at this point. Which, I mean, look at me. I'm a happy guy when you see the House stopped. Mogwai said, did Matt Gaetz get Beavis TP for his bunghole? TP for my bunghole. Elizabeth Warren for Speaker. She's a woman, a Native American. It's perfect. She's in the Senate, though, and I don't know that, well, as of right now, even though the nomination is in, and they still have to get the person past the... I think the legislature in California still has to come back out and get the person passed, but... Do keep in mind, Chuck U. Schumer is down a vote right now. Already. And I think he's got one other person out at this time, too. He can't afford to lose another vote to let somebody out of the Senate to be the Speaker. Nor can Mass organize a special election because, if I remember correctly, their constitution, the governor can't just appoint somebody. It has to go by special election. So they won't be able to wrangle a special election back into place in time to give Chuck U. Schumer back the leadership role. So there are a few things that are happening right now with this. I actually found it interesting that all the Democrats voted to vacate. That was the part that surprised me the most because, well, let's be realistic. Kevin McCarthy was their controlled opposition. Well, there's that, but there's also the fact that they really had to. They backed themselves into a corner on that based on the fact that they've been calling the guy a fucking demon since he ran against Nancy Pelosi last time there was a speakership fight. So there's that aspect to it too. Into is here, Historic Times. Hi Jay. Hi Into. To be honest, when was the last time all the Senate was there? 1942? No. All the Senate actually has been there for the vast majority of this term. Surprisingly. We had those couple months that Dianne Feinstein was out, but I mean, she's been physically there for longer than she's been out. So there's that aspect to it. Especially when it's razor thin like this. Now, when one party enjoys a comfortable advantage, they do get a little bit more lackadaisical and like, oh, well, I can go campaign, I can go do this, I can go do that for my state, my district, my people, etc. But when it's this razor thin, no, they try to keep as many people into that place as they humanly possibly can. So there's that aspect to it. So that's what's happening right now. It's been an interesting time. How did this start? Well, we got to go back a week. Actually, not even a week. Back to Saturday at midnight. From NPC News again, how Congress avoided a government shutdown at the 11th hour. And you know what the worst part of a government shutdown is? They're going to open the damn thing back up. Let's read from NPC News. Sahil Kapoor, Julie Sirkin, Rebecca Kaplan, Frank Thorpe, The fifth, Scott Wong, who might be Wong about this one, and Kyle Stewart. House Speaker. Former House Speaker, remember this was written on September 30th, knew Friday night that if he wanted to stop the government from shutting down, he might have to do something he had avoided for months under pressure from the far right. He was going to have to rely on Democrats, which meant he had to give certain things away to them in order to rely on them. 8 minutes before midnight, which is 3 minutes before a Boys Like Girls song that I very much enjoy, and with just a little more than 24 hours to figure out a way to keep funding the government, without stopping spending on the table, of course, the Speaker quietly filed a new bill at the House GOP meeting in the morning. He made the shocking announcement that he would largely embrace bipartisan legislation, which meant Democrat legislation, in the Democrat-led Senate to keep the government open through November 17th, according to a source close to Kevin McCarthy. But there was one catch: he would cut funding for Ukraine while leaving in disaster relief funding. Lacking enough Republican votes, he made a wager that Democrats would rescue the bill. McCarthy's move was an act of defiance against the hardliners who strenuously opposed the short-term bill. Some, like Gates, even threatened to force a vote to overthrow him. My, how this has changed in history if he passed the bill with Democrat votes. But the Speaker's decision to set in motion a rapid series of events that led to the House passing a slightly revised bill to keep the government funding through November 17th on a broad bipartisan vote, and the Senate swallowing it just in time to keep the lights on. But now we have to sit down right before Thanksgiving and decide whether or not we're actually going to keep the goddamn thing open again. You guys know where I stand on that. Well, guys, says McCarthy stood on the Senate floor and yelled, "You get an abortion! You get an abortion! You all get abortions!" Well, can I call them all abortions on YouTube? Do you think Susan's watching? Well, it's not Susan anymore. I don't even know who the new CEO is over there. The gamble paid off after some angst and political machinations when 209 Democrats joined 126 Republicans to pass the bill. Just one Democrat, Mike Quigley of Illinois, voted no, and Democrats were quick to claim victory. Yes, because their religious institution, the government, stayed open. So that's how this started. I was kind of actually looking forward to seeing the government shut down briefly for this one. But unfortunately, I was in the minority for that. Corporate America, of course, considering themselves the big winner for this one here from CNN. Corporate America praises the adults who averted a government shutdown from Matt Egan. Corporate America is breathing a sigh of relief after lawmakers narrowly avoided a chaotic shutdown of the federal government. Now, mind you, financially they're still hurting just a little bit here because also, just after this bill passed, 90% of millennials suddenly had $200 less or more to spend each month. That started back up. Business leaders and economists had warned a shutdown would have hurt the economy by causing vast uncertainty, significant disruptions, and hurting confidence, which are three reasons why our government has way too much bloody power. While brinksmanship is never the answer, we're pleased that the adults, the people we donated to in order to own them in Congress and make sure they pass bills that we like, stepped up to prevent a shutdown and the direct harm it would have caused to millions of Americans and American small businesses who would have been impacted. Neil Bradley, Chief Policy Officer at the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, said in a statement this weekend, "I want to say a prayer right now. I'm going to stop what I'm doing. I'm going to say a prayer. Please, Lord, as I continue down the road of business venture, please never let me be so reliant on the federal government that a shutdown would stop my business. Please, dear God, let me be independent enough that I don't have to reach out to daddy government in order to provide a good or service to the people that I love providing goods and services to. In Jesus' name, amen." 80s Kid says the gates closed on McCarthy. Yes, they did. The gates closed. Up until Saturday, a shutdown looked very likely. Yeah, I was hoping for it. But then House Speaker McCarthy abruptly shifted course and moved to pass a bill with support from Democrats. The chamber commended lawmakers who voted to keep the government open on a bipartisan basis and called for Congress to finish the job. We urge Congress to use these 45 days to complete the appropriations process, provide the urgently needed funding to support Ukraine in its war against Russia and aggression, and take steps to secure the border. Bradley, the chamber said. So that's still going to be the dream, of course, is to continue to fund the Ukraine. Make sure that their politicians and people get paid before our people do, of course. And yes, political following up. White House prepares to fight for Ukraine aid after shutdown averted. With Biden and his puppet master walking down into the Oval Office. Jennifer Haberkorn, Jonathan Lemire, and Sam Stein reporting with minutes to spare. Biden signed a stopgap funding bill Saturday to avert a shutdown and keep the government open for 45 days. Like others in the Capitol, the Biden White House had been caught off guard Saturday morning when Speaker McCarthy abruptly reversed course and announced he would bring a clean stopgap bill to fund the government through November 17th. But aides weren't terribly surprised. They weren't displeased when the outcome either. The bill didn't just fund the government, it also included $16 billion in disaster relief and, as one White House official noted, avoids any version of the deep cuts to essential domestic programs that were proposed in the past few days. Because we can't stop funding the big government programs and the rich men north of Richmond. But the final measure did not include aid for Ukraine, and the absence was not just a blow for Biden, but to Volodymyr Zelensky too. The Ukrainian president had just met with the president and lawmakers last week to once again make the case for additional funds for Kiev's defense against Moscow, in spite of the fact that Moscow has made no effort to go to Kiev. Inside the admin, aides attempted to downplay the exclusion because it's a loss for them. McCarthy stated his support for aid to Ukraine, the White House official said, adding that they expected to bring a separate bill to the floor shortly. Because they can bring a single-line bill for that, but they can't bring a single-line bill for literally anything else in the world. Let's see, what else do we have here? Let's listen to Bobby Reich talking about the narrowly avoided government shutdown. Now, I will give full disclosure to this. I've not pre-listened to this, but this is a 2-minute speech from the world's worst economist and noted worshiper of the government, Robert Reich, just to hear what it is that they think about this. Mr. Scott is here. Yes, Contemporary is back. And I'm a lot more full of energy than I was before. And Mr. Scott has also moved to Rumble. He is getting ready indeed to rumble. Let's listen to Mr. Reich.
Congress narrowly averted a government shutdown last night. Still, that doesn't mean the problem has gone away. We have thoughts this morning from economist Robert Reich.
We averted a government shutdown for now, but this kind of last-minute and temporary perils of Pauline drama is itself harmful to America. Millions of people didn't know if they'd continue to get disaster relief or clean water protection or food safety inspections, cancer research, nutrition programs for children. Federal workers such as air traffic controllers and those in the military would have been required to work without pay, even though most would have gotten back pay once the shutdown ended. Most low-wage federal contractors, on the other hand, would have been out of luck. The blame falls squarely on...
That's just, honestly, I'm going to tell you right off the bat, that is nothing but an admission that there are too many people working for the government. And Biden is signing bill after bill to get more positions added.
MAGA extremists acting on Donald Trump's orders, hard right House Republicans who would have taken America hostage. There was no reason for this close call. In May, House Republican leaders agreed to a very specific deal to fund the government. Then they reneged on it, proposing instead to cut housing subsidies for the poor, just as soaring rents drive a national affordability crisis, taking nutritional assistance away from more than 1 million women and children, cutting home heating assistance just as we head into the winter months. At least the Senate had the sense to come up with a bipartisan continuing resolution to keep the government open. This shootout inside the Republican Party was all about showing Trump who was willing to fight the hardest, regardless of whether any of it made any sense even for them. The rest of the country was almost caught in the crossfire. And we're still not out of the woods. The continuing resolution just kicks the can down the road. My advice to the rest of America? Well, remember this as we head into election season.
I vote only for Democrats because they're the only ones who want to give you away free shit. God, I can't stand that guy. They're holding America hostage. Well, no, they're putting more positions in so more Americans are affected by this. And I'm going to go out and tell you this right off the bat. If the size of the federal government was decreased by about 90%, and all those people went out and got private sector jobs, which are out there waiting for them, by the way. There are private sector jobs that are waiting for these people. And Republicans and Democrats try to pull this stunt again and shut down the government and try to say, government shut down, it's scary. The people would look back at the government and say, we don't care. We're working. We'll go to a private resort rather than within the national park. Fuck off. Anyway, Robert Reich. And yes, you are in the proper platform to go full caps lock because there's a robot on Twitch and YouTube that stops that. I think we should annex Baja. Pretty sure that we've got 2 presidential candidates who are working on that right now along with the rest of Mexico. We ship all these immigrants down there and put them to work first building a dam across the Gulf of California. It is pretty shallow. But, of course, the question again is that a goddamn? Yes. Same in the Netherlands. More and more working for the government, if I'm correct. They should do with less. Are you in the Netherlands into? At least Rooney was entertaining. This guy could bore a statue, says the Mogwai. Anyway, we got to keep going with this one here. One of the interesting turns of events on the shutdown fight, even more interesting than what happened with McCarthy, is what happened with Bowman from Fox L5 News. U.S. Capitol Police investigating evacuation after Representative Jamal Bowman pulled a fire alarm. By the way, granting us with some of the best memes that we've had for quite a while. And we've had some really good ones. I said that the bar is very low for the best speaker of our recent history. The bar is very high on the memes, and the meme makers deliver with this stupid crap. From Scott Thuman over at Fox L5 News. An investigation into the fire alarm being pulled in a Capitol building over the weekend was launched by U.S. Capitol Police. They announced Monday that they're looking into the incident involving Jamal Bowman. It was a dramatic weekend on Capitol Hill as Congress rushed to avoid a government shutdown, but one moment that didn't involve a vote is now a part of the fallout. That's because Democratic lawmaker Jamal Bowman pulled a fire alarm, forcing a pause in the action and causing the evacuation of the Cannon House building. There are now multiple calls for an investigation, even for the lawmaker to be expelled, so we'll be talking about that. The act was caught on camera, of course, too, taking place around noon in, by the way, the most surveilled set of buildings in the world, in the most surveilled city in the world. And yet we still have no answer as to how those gallows got to the Capitol. Nobody saw anybody carrying the gallows in. Nobody saw anybody carrying building materials in, anybody carrying hammers, anything else. It just kind of showed up there for a photo op, and nobody knows why or how. I'm willing to bet that once that information comes out, it's going to incriminate a lot of people. In a statement, Bowman said in part, "I came to a door that's usually open for votes, but today it would not open. I'm embarrassed to admit that I activated the fire alarm mistakenly thinking it would open the door." This guy was a school principal, by the way. Just keep that in the back of your mind. The 47-year-old with a doctorate in educational leadership in his second term representing Westchester County and the Bronx. So there's going to be an investigation. It's not going to go anywhere. This is actually another one of the things that's probably going to be stopped and stalled based on the fact that McCarthy is out at this point, but it's still insanely stupid. Jamal Bowman doing damage control from Axios. Jamal Bowman damage control. Royals Capitol Hill as GOP closes in. From Andrew Solender. Yes, today's events literally saved him, most likely. Gallagher, the guy who had the huge hammer and smashed watermelons. He's dead, but it's a solid idea. This may be my last contemporary. Well, that'll be sad. We like you here. Into is from the Netherlands, the same place as Styx is living currently. Mogwai says DeSantis wants to blow up Mexico, so a bridge might be a bad idea. The turmoil surrounding Jamal Bowman for pulling the House office building alarm raged on Monday as the staff tried to rally fellow Democrats around a defense. Democratic staffers were transfixed and bewildered by a messaging memo that Bowman's office sent out on Monday before restricting access to it 7 minutes later. The memo copy, a copy of which was obtained by Axios, included a list of 9 suggested talking points, including, "I believe Congressman Bowman when he says this was an accident. Republicans need to instead focus their energy on the Nazi members of their party before anything else." Soon after sending the memo, in a Google Doc, access was restricted as it was leaked to reporters, with Bowman's office urging staffers who want messaging to reach out directly according to emails viewed by Axios. So they can't even let the information get out grassroots. They have to tell their sycophants and their simps how to feel about this. What he's saying, "I just became aware that in our messaging guidance there was inappropriate use of the term Nazi without my consent." Oh, bullshit. Bowman said in a post on the social media site X, formerly known as Twitter. "I condemn the use of the term Nazi out of its precise definition. Even though its precise definition is anybody who disagrees with me politically, it's important to specify the term Nazi, refer to members of the Nazi Party and neo-Nazis." Lisa McLean of Michigan, a member of the GOP leadership, is circulating a censure resolution that would also strip Bowman of his committee assignments and direct the Ethics Committee to open an investigation into him, according to a copy of the text viewed by Axios. The resolution accuses Bowman of violating DC ordinances prohibiting knowingly causing a false alarm and federal laws against the obstruction of official proceedings, both of which were there, and there is precedence to using the obstruction of official proceedings in a felony manner. Keep that in mind. You set the stage for that when you did all your bullcrap with the January 6 people. Malliotakis on Monday introduced her resolution with 12 GOP co-sponsors to expel Bowman from Congress. Now, is this wishful thinking? Yes. It is very unlikely that Bowman will get expelled from Congress over a misdemeanor. It's possible, but it's very unlikely, especially given the fact that there is no House Speaker right now. And I did look it up because we were talking about this in the Discord. It is a misdemeanor in the District of Columbia to knowingly pull a fire alarm. It's a felony in some states. Illinois is actually one of them, but it's a misdemeanor in most states and the District of Columbia. With the modifier of obstructing a official government proceeding, an official proceeding, that may be enough to do so, but again, with no speaker, it's very unlikely that this is going to happen. But just the fact, of course, that he was out there and did this, and then tried to say, I didn't know any better. Politico magazine. Bowman Camp slams Nazi Republicans after fire alarm flap from Daniela Diaz, Nicholas Wu, and Olivia Beavers. Yeah, we covered this one already. I'm actually going to skip this one here. But that's what happened with the budget leading up to today's events of, well, no more McCarthy. You know, I haven't pulled the sounder in quite a while. I think we need to do it, so let's have a listen over here. And yet, unfortunately, Bowman is probably going to stay. All right. Let's move on to our segment called F's in the Chat. Dianne Feinstein, longest-serving female U.S. Senator in history, dies at age 90. I'm pretty positive Dianne Feinstein's been dead for 6 months, and they're just now coming out with this. They can't weekend at Bernie's her anymore. Stuff's starting to fall off, and yeah, she's been dead for a long time. I mean, I will admit that when the bombs fall, I hope I get ghoulified and would probably look like that. Like she looked at the very end. Assuming, of course, there was still a Dianne Feinstein in there. I still have questions about that, of course. Let's see. Helix says, any use of the word Nazi is blatantly MK Ultra fear programming. Absolutely. Any guesses on who the next speaker is? I actually said that in the Discord earlier. I said, I mean, the next person, whoever it is going to suck. So I suggested John from the Porch Boys and Seawall, also from the Porch Boys, as the next people in there. And then when I got told, hey, seriously, who is the next person going to be? I said, I have given this question all the respect that it deserves. You might as well just nominate Mickey Mouse at this point because the result is going to be the same. My confusion is that if McCarthy was a Dem shill, why did Dems all vote him out? Because they spent the last... Since he ran against Nancy Pelosi when Democrats were in control of Congress last, they have said that, I mean, their people have been screaming Nazi, evil, fascist, Trump lover, etc. at Kevin McCarthy since then. They had to do it to save face. They can't come back and vote to save him after telling their supporters for the last 5 years that he was evil incarnate. Yeah, Styx is back in Vermont now. He, I think it's just a temporary site, but yeah, I remember he did brag a lot of the time that I'm on 2 continents now. And Styx is probably one of the only political commentators I still listen to. Although I did dabble a little bit more on that over the month break. All right, F's in the chat. Claire Ferrand and Paul LeBlanc reporting for CNN. Dianne Feinstein, whose 3 decades in the Senate made her the longest-serving female U.S. senator in history, has died. Following months of declining health, she was 90. Do you know who the longest-serving senator is in history? I think... Actually, I got to check on that one. Because I think I know who it is, and I think it's somebody that we all know very well, being politically active right now. But I might be wrong on that. No, it was Robert Byrd. I was wrong. I thought it was Biden. Actually, he's not even anywhere close to that. He's number 19 on the list. It's, yeah, Robert Byrd was the longest serving senator, 51 years. As a Democrat, and a KKK member too, by the way. Pat Leahy, who is still in. No, I'm sorry, he just stepped aside not that long ago. Chuck Grassley, who's still in. McConnell, who's still in. I thought for sure Biden was going to be on the top because he was basically there from the moment that he could be seated up until pretty much, I guess I suppose that Barack did pull him earlier than he maybe should have been. So that's, okay, I was wrong. I'll admit it. Feinstein, a Democrat, died Thursday night in her home in D.C., her office said in a statement. Her death hands California Democrat Governor Gavin Newsom the power to appoint a lawmaker to serve out the rest of Feinstein's term, keeping the Democratic majority in the chamber through early January 2025. Newsom has publicly pledged to appoint a black woman, because that matters. If Feinstein were to vacate her office and told NPC's Meet the Depressed earlier this month that he would make an interim appointment who wouldn't be any of the candidates who were seeking the next seat in next year's election. We'll be talking about her in just a moment. Feinstein's death also comes as federal funding is set to expire and Congress is at an impasse on how to avoid a shutdown. That aged well, by the way. Feinstein, a former mayor in San Francisco, was a leading figure in California politics for decades and became a national face of the Democratic Party, which makes a lot of sense in how her face looked at the very end. Following her first election to the U.S. Senate in 1992, she broke a series of glass ceilings throughout her political career, and her influence was felt strongly in some of Capitol Hill's most consequential works in recent history, including the since-lapsed federal assault weapons ban in 1994 and the 2014 CIA torture report. She was also a longtime force on the Senate's Intelligence and Judiciary Committee. In her later years, Feinstein's health was the subject of increasing speculation, and the California Democrat was prominent among aging lawmakers whose decisions to remain in office drew scrutiny, especially in an age of narrow party margins in Congress. Now, as far as Feinstein goes, I am no friend of Feinstein. I will say that right off the bat. Absolutely not. No fan of that woman right there. She was one of the leading voices against the Second Amendment. But I will give credit where credit is due. Feinstein was one of the holdouts to keep the filibuster in place. She was one of the people who refused to vote that away and was very adamant against what the CIA did, even through the points where her party was in control of the CIA. So there's credit where credit is due, and of course, I always wish people the best of peace into the next life, even if they're insanely evil, like Dianne Feinstein was through most of her career. So she will have her comeuppance. She will have to deal with God now. I don't know that it's going to be pretty. We'll see what happens there. And of course, pretty sure that she died 6 months ago. What do we have here? Boombox says, just to get the Trump in a speaker, the left will have a shit fit. Nancy Pelosi telling McCarthy, I will never vote against you. I guess she kept her word. McCarthy would have reasoned all Dems vote together, so I should be safe. Ah, yes. Nobody's talking about it now. I can see things somehow sometimes. Boombox says she was replaced by a black lesbian. I'll be talking about that in just a bit. Let's go over on the main chat side. DM Ryan is here, of course. Better late. Hi, everyone. Welcome back. All right. Of course, as they said in the last article, the age question is up on full display here from Politico magazine. Feinstein's demise is a warning for Biden and Trump. Ooh, a warning! From Alexander Burns, there's a phenomenon in politics. Phenomenon! I always remember the Phenomena song where they cut in Peterson's voice for that. And it makes me laugh every single time. Whereby if someone is old and infirm but remain alive for a while in a diminished state, they can almost persuade people that they're immune to death. So it was with John McCain, who died at 81 from a vicious brain cancer that left no hope of recovery, but whose actual death still sent a deep shudder through the political world. So too was it with Ruth Bader Ginsburg, whose death at 87 after multiple battles with cancer shattered her admirers and pitched the Supreme Court rightward. That, by the way, was arrogance. Ginsburg had the chance to resign under Obama and was urged to do so, and let Obama appoint her successor. And was urged to do so, by the way. That was pure stupidity and arrogance on her part. I want to be replaced by the first woman president. Well, then you got replaced by Trump, so how did that work out for you? And so it was this week with Feinstein, the 90-year-old California senator who suffered from shingles injuries from a tumble at home and apparent memory loss, but whose death still managed to startle much of Washington. There was truly nothing surprising about life coming to an end for someone in her frail condition, except maybe that it didn't happen sooner, and I'm still not completely convinced that that's not the case. Feinstein's death should be more than startling. It should be a warning to the people of both parties who believe that they can bend their own mortality to an electoral calendar or personal timeline for legacy building. Yeah, that's called arrogance. This delusion has never been more common or more potentially disruptive in the U.S. than it is today. With a great probability that Biden and Trump will be nominated for president next year, it's not a leap to say that it's likelier now than at any other point in memory that the next president will expire before his term does. Yeah, that's a reality, but that was also a reality for JFK. Keep that in mind. So they're going to try to pull the fear porn here and say, oh, just nominate Newsom and DeSantis and everything will be A-okay. That's the problem. They haven't put anybody that's younger up that's worth voting for. Not that Trump really is either, because he was a spending goon just like the rest of them. As for who we are getting, Politico reporting, Newsom picks LaFonza Butler as Feinstein replacement. Now, before we read Politico sing all of LaFonza Butler's praises, let's see who LaFonza Butler is. And I took a meme that was quoted with this particular one. California Governor Gavin Newsom will appoint Emily's List President LaFonza Butler to fill the seat of the late Senator Dianne Feinstein, elevating the head of fundraising juggernaut that works to elect Democrat women who support abortion rights, according to a person familiar with the decision. Yeah, that wasn't political at all. And by the way, LaFonza Butler is a resident of Maryland. That's right, Californians are not even being represented to the U.S. government by 2 Californians, only 1. Reading from Politico, Newsom picks LaFonza Butler as Feinstein replacement. Christopher Catalego reporting, Gavin Newsom will appoint Emily's List President LaFonza Butler to fill the seat of the late Senator Dianne Feinstein, elevating the head of a fundraising juggernaut that works to elect Democrat women who support abortion rights, according to a person familiar with the decision. Newsom is moving swiftly to name the next senator 2 days after Feinstein's death and just as perilously split Congress. Narrowly averted a government shutdown, Senate Democrats are in need of every vote in a closely divided chamber. The announcement was expected to come Monday, and an advisor to the governor, Anthony York, told Politico that Newsom is making his appointment without putting limitations or preconditions on his pick, running for the seat in 2024. That means Butler could decide to join in the sprawling and competitive field of Democrat contenders seeking to succeed Feinstein, with special elections now later on top of the March primary and November runoff. But it's still going to be Schiff's seat, which is part of the reason that they put somebody from Maryland in that seat. Butler's expected to be sworn into the U.S. Senate on Wednesday by Kamala Harris. Heels up Harris. Newsom's selection of Butler comes at a moment of immense change in California's political establishment, with millions of people still mourning the death of Feinstein. Right, but business as usual has to go, so... They picked somebody from Maryland to be their senator from California. All right, let's move on into a segment called In Soviet Russia. From CBS News, Trump's civil fraud trial in New York puts his finances in the spotlight. Here's what to know about the case. Be talking a little bit about some of the things that are happening with that as well. Former President Trump and New York AG Letitia James have been for years on a collision course, and it's now playing out in a courtroom in Lower Manhattan. Trump has long volleyed insults at James while her office investigated him and his company in an investigation that ultimately led to her filing a $250 million civil lawsuit, accusing Trump and others at the Trump Organization of widespread fraud. The trial stemming from that suit got underway Monday, and Trump is there in the courtroom for opening statements. Who are the defendants? Trump, 3 of his children, Don Jr., Ivanka, and Eric, and several other company executives, and the Trump Organization itself were sued in September 2022 by James. Her office accused them of perpetrating years of fraud and vastly overrepresenting both Trump's wealth and the values of many of his properties on financial statements. This summer, the New York Appeals Court dismissed allegations related to Ivanka, ruling that they involved contracts from too long ago. We'll be talking about that in just a second, too. The court did not dismiss allegations against the company, Trump, Donald Trump Jr., Eric Trump, allowing claims against them to go to trial. Just wait. The Trumps and their company are accused of fraud, falsification of business records, issuing of false financial statements, and conspiracy. Among other allegations, the AG has accused Trump of overstating his wealth by billions of dollars and the value of many properties by hundreds of millions while seeking out loans. He has denied wrongdoings. James's office is seeking $250 million in a slew of sanctions designed to severely limit the Trumps' ability to do business in New York. Which, given the fact that they're still doing business in New York, is just a mind fuck to me. I would have stepped away from that the day I stepped out of the presidency if it was me. MK Ultra trauma-based fear and mind control. Want to know where the money comes from that pays the people who brainwash her for the big bucks? The government. I already knew that, dude. Music is high. I can touch that down just a little bit. Thank you. All I gotta do is ask. I want to make this the best possible contemporary for you. And going back to regular OBS over Streamlabs is actually going to give me a little bit more control over the program. And the volume. Remember who gave the order to make you wear masks and get the jabby jab to travel? Separately, Trump is facing criminal charges. We know that. On Monday, both sides presented their sides of the case during opening arguments, with Kevin Wallace leading the Attorney General's team. And by the way, before we get too much further into this, we will say goodbye to Instagram because they are back to limiting to an hour for uploads. So join me over on YouTube. The link is in the description, and we'll see you there. Otherwise, we'll see you next week for more contemporary. Take care. Have a good afternoon, and good night. All right, the Instagram people are gone. We can talk about them. Both sides presented their sides of the case during opening arguments, with Kevin Wallace leading the Attorney General's team of attorneys and a host of lawyers representing the various defendants. Wallace said prosecutors intend to demonstrate the defendants knowingly submitted fraudulent financial statements. He said they would show that defendants had the intent to defraud when falsifying the records and conspired to do so. See, the problem with this is the people that they conspired to do so with were the people who gave them the loans, who, by the way, under any other court of law or civil court, would be the people who are making the allegations, the people who are suing. None of them are bringing a claim forward. And by the way, all the loans that were given out to the Trumps have been paid back in this case. And as we'll find out in just a bit here, most of them are past the statute of limitations as well. So I don't know where the case is on this. Letitia James coming out to tell the world how she is going to put him in his place. AG James with the statement, "It's my responsibility, my duty, and my job to enforce the law." By going through a civil suit well beyond the statute of limitations, no matter how powerful you are, no matter how much money you think you may have, no one is above the law. Let's listen to AG James.
Donald Trump and the other defendants have committed persistent and repeated fraud. Last week, we proved that in our motion for summary judgment. Today, we will prove our other claims. My message is simple. No matter how powerful you are, no matter how much money you think you may have, no one is above the law. And it is my responsibility and my duty and my job to enforce it. The law is both powerful and fragile. And today in court, we will prove our case. I thank you all for being here. And again, justice will prevail. Thank you. Donald Trump and the other defendants have
Again, there's no complainant other than the government. And if these properties were undervalued by the government, that's on the tax assessor. That's not on the Trumps. If you can't go and do your own homework on how much these things are valued to, that's kind of a you problem. Still more takeaways from day one of the $250 million Trump fraud trial. Oh, Trump turns the courtroom into a campaign stop. Well, he does that everywhere. That's par for the course at this point. You put a camera in front of this guy and he's going to make the case for why he should be running the government. Trump's arrival downtown to the Manhattan courthouse Monday turned the event into a spectacle of his own making. Yeah, that's because he's a brander. He does that all the time. AG asked to ban Trump from doing business in New York. Again, that would have been the point where I just said, fuck you, see ya. Trump's lawyers say this is how real estate works. But again, all the loans were all paid back. None of the lenders, the bankers, or the real estate agents have complained about this. This is literally the government trying to find something to sue over. Boombox says she's high on ego. She has no idea what's going on. She's oblivious. She thinks if I stick to the narrative, I get paid $100 grand. And something else that I cannot say on YouTube. Couldn't they find a better case? Apparently not. Judge spars with Trump attorneys after Haba finished her opening statement, which attacked James for campaigning that she would get Trump, and Garan pushed back against the Trump attorney. The judge noted that the defense team already tried to dismiss the case, by claiming James brought it as a witch hunt against Trump. He had already denied the motion, Engoron said, and his ruling had been affirmed by New York Appellate Court. So Ms. James' motivations are no longer an issue in this case, are they? Engoron said. The judge also sparred with Hoppe over discussion about accounting disclaimer for Mazars, Trump's former accounting firm. The disclaimer essentially said, "We're relying on the Trump organization," and Engoron said, "That's how I read it." "No, Your Honor," Hoppe responded, arguing Trump organization relied on Mazars and they're the accountants. And the part that they had to bury at the very bottom, well, second to very bottom, the very bottom is trial is going to last a long time. Well, if 80% of the case is gone, no, the trial is not going to last for a very long time. But they buried this down, deep down in the article, much longer after people stopped reading. Statute of limitations will be an ongoing debate. No, it will not. Near the end of the day, Engoron questioned whether lengthy witness testimony about 2011 financial documents was a waste of time because statute of limitations applying to the case expired in 2014. 9 years ago, by the way. The issue is something to watch going forward, as Trump and his lawyers can say they can toss a majority of the case over the statute of limitations. They can, by the way. The judge was responding to testimony from former Mazars accountant Donald Bender about the 2011 financial documents, acknowledging that a New York appellate court had ruled the statute of limitations only allowed allegations from 2014 onward to apply in the case. "I trust that you can relate the 2011 documents to something that happened later," Engoron said to the AG's lawyers, "or this has all been a waste of time." The defense agreed with Engoron's assertion, prompting Trump to give a thumbs up. The judge's comments marked a small win for Trump because the judge acknowledged the statute of limitations that had been decided on by the appeals court, though the judge also acknowledged the time limitation in his order last week. But see, they don't want this on the top for the CNN audience to consume. They want that all the way at the bottom. It's technically truth, but it's lie by omission. All right. And this is the back and forth with that. ALX saying, breaking, Trump's lawyers say the judge has agreed that the statute of limitations has run up on transactions that have closed prior to 2014 and are now out of the case. Trump says this makes up 80% of the case. Let's listen.
I think that was very good. That last 5 minutes was outstanding because the judge essentially conceded that the statute of limitations that we won at the Court of Appeals is in effect. Therefore, about 80% of the case is over. I was going to come out and say that, as you know, we're not entitled to a jury, which is pretty unusual in the United States of America. So we think it's very unfair that I don't have a jury. But the judge's last statement was very fair. And if I read it right, I'll let perhaps one of the lawyers speak to it. But Cliff, maybe you'll speak to it if you would. But the way I interpret that, and the way everyone else in the room seems to interpret that, is that the statute of limitations is a very real thing in this country. And that would be about 80% of this case would be over. Could somebody speak to that, please? Cliff, you want to talk about that?
Sure. So based on the judge's comments, at the end of the trial today, it would appear that he is agreeing that all the transactions that closed prior to 2014 are now out of the case.
Which is about 80% of the case. And it's also something that we won on appeal, but was not accepted by this court, but now seems to be accepted by this court.
We won it on appeal. We won. But it wasn't accepted by this court. But now it's accepted by this court. So,
I think that was very good.
Now, one thing that I noted, and I took a screenshot of this because I'm sure that they probably went back and scrubbed this at this point, is when I was looking for this, I was actually looking for articles that talked about the statute of limitations, and obviously when you Googled Trump civil lawsuit, it showed he made it into a campaign stop. Oh, they say, here's your takeaways from this. Oh, James can sue him. Oh, they ruled that he can sue him. And this was an hour after this happened, so it wasn't like they were waiting for things to collate. If you Googled statute of limitations, the news was all the way down at the end. In fact, they wanted to see images, examples by state, Wisconsin, Colorado criminal law before you started talking about the news, which should have been picking this up and going with that. But, then you can't scream, Orange Man bad, and he's going to jail this time, and never mind the fact there's no jail here. Helix says, Trump lives in his own world. That's part of why he's still strong. And then he also says, annex Baja, which again, if Nikki Haley and Ron DeSantis have their way, we'll just annex the whole goddamn country. We'll see what happens there. All right. Let's talk about the looting that happened last week, which I legitimately posted a question on X because I completely missed the story of, hey, why are we looting now? So this actually goes back deep into August, and this story got completely passed over in August because we were doing Trump things apparently. NBC News reports graphic body cam video shows officer now charged with murder firing into Eddie Irizarry's car. Now this isn't why they were looting, by the way. They were looting, we'll find out later, because the charges got dropped, but they got refiled again, of course, and a civil suit for those pesky times when the law doesn't just roll over on your side, from Minnie Von Burke. A former Philadelphia officer who fatally shot Eddie Irizarry as he sat in his car faces murder and other charges, DA Larry Krasner announced on Friday after he released body cam footage of the August 14th encounter. The former officer, Mark Dial, turned himself in Friday morning. Krasner said it's not clear if he has an attorney who can speak on his behalf. Dial, a 5-year vet, was fired from the Philly Police Department after security video released by an attorney, not an AG, for Irizarry's family showed him repeatedly firing into the man's car. Krasner, who released the additional body cam footage before announcing the charges, said the video was extremely difficult to watch. There's always some level of trauma, especially for family members, associated with watching something that's extremely violent, he said. Pausing to gather himself, I hope anyone who's considering looking at these videos in the public, I hope that any adult will think twice, and frankly, I hope that any adult will think twice about watching these videos. Because in some ways, for those people, they will be traumatic. Mayor Kenney also called the footage graphic and offered his condolences to the Irizarry family. I recognize that no action that we take as the city can bring him back, but I'm confident that the DA's office is working towards justice for Mr. Irizarry and his family, he said in a statement. And this again, well, this was updated on September 8th, so we're still over a month ago at this point. But this is from all the way back on August 14th, which is when this happened. This from the 27th. Charges dismissed against former Philly cop who killed Eddie Irizarry during a traffic stop, from Hayden Mittman and the Associated Press for NBC 10 out of Philadelphia. Murder charges against a former Philly police officer who was accused of shooting and killing a man in the city's Kensington neighborhood in August have been dismissed. On Tuesday, in a courtroom at the Criminal Justice Center, charges were dismissed against Mark Dial, who shot and killed Eddie Irizarry on August 14th, citing a lack of evidence. Okay, I'm going to need to hear some more about that because they literally had him on his own camera doing it, and he turned himself in. In court, Municipal Judge Wendy Pugh determined the incident to be a justifiable shooting. After the verdict was announced, the courtroom erupted as members of Irizarry's family wailed aloud upon learning of the ruling. Outside the courthouse, Irizarry's family vowed to appeal the decision. They filed a wrongful death lawsuit against Dial and his partner. And one of the problems there is when you dismiss charges against the defendant, filing appeal to recharge the defendant, it's possible, especially depending on state to state, but it's very difficult to do. It's one of the harder points in lawfare to do. It is possible to do, but typically when the charges are dismissed against you from the state can't come back and say, "Whoops, sorry." Pretty much takes an act of God to get there. We're going to continue to fight. We can't stop, said Zoraida Garcia, Irizarry's aunt. We showed her it was a murder. The officer used deadly force. The window was up, the door was locked, and you shot through the window 6 times. We're going to keep fighting, Nelson Garcia, Irizarry's grandfather, told NPC 10's Miguel Martinez Valle. This is not okay. On Tuesday, the Office of Philadelphia District Attorney Larry Krasner vowed to appeal as well. The DA's office disagrees with the decision by the municipal court Judge Wendy L. Pugh to dismiss all charges against the defendant Mark Dial for the killing of Eddie Irizarry. The officer was charged with manslaughter, official oppression, and 4 other counts in connection with the death of Irizarry. Dial's bail was revoked earlier this month after prosecutors argued the charges made him ineligible for release. If Irizarry made any comments to the police before he was killed, they aren't in the body cam footage, they say. So, I do have questions about this one. Now, one of the problems with this, of course, is we're not getting the whole story out of this. To take what NBC 10 says at its word tells us that there's no feasible, possible reason for these charges to be dismissed. But allegedly, and I can't say for sure if this is the case or not, the judge saw something that the rest of us didn't see in any of this. I'd like to know what that was, but they are going to come back and refile for this one. From the New York Post, Philly DA refiles murder charges against cop who shot Eddie Irizarry hours after judge dismissed the case. The Philadelphia DA reportedly refiled murder charges against a former city cop who shot and killed a man, just hours after the judge shocked the victim's family by tossing the case. Dial's lawyers say the officer believed Irizarry had a gun during the traffic stop, a sentiment apparently shared by Judge Wendy Pugh, who dismissed the first set of charges on Tuesday. I agree with you 100%, the judge told defense attorney Brian McMonigal, who argued Dial had acted in self-defense. Then she tossed the case for lack of evidence, leaving the dead man's relatives stunned and distraught inside of her courtroom. Just hours later, the DA filed a motion to reinstate the charges, which include murder, voluntary manslaughter, and aggravated assault. According to CBS, his next court date will be October 25th, with Judge Lillian Ransom. That's a still of the body cam footage. I'm sorry, that's not the body cam footage. That's a still, though. So he's gun pointed through the windshield. I don't know about this one. I guess, again, I would have to see the evidence that Wendy Pugh used to make the determination that Irizarry had a gun. I can't say whether this was the right or the wrong decision. I know Irizarry's family has already said this was the wrong decision. I can't say that based on what's been laid out in front of me, but I also can't say that it was the right decision either, because I need to see what Wendy Pugh saw that the rest of us didn't see. But of course, this led into lootings. Followed after charges dropped in Eddie Irizarry shooting, Bob Menendez pleads not guilty. From the protests to the looting to the erosion of public trust with law enforcement, how can current and future leaders stand firm on crime and keep the community safe? Let's listen. Now, we're not going to listen to a half an hour of this one. But I mean, they get this verdict and they just go out and start looting. And it's not because we're oppressed and we need to go have food and everything. I mean, they're going after the high-end retail stores. They're looking for things to sell. They're looking for things to keep of their own. I don't believe in looting, and of course, they're destroying their own neighborhood in the process because of something that a government official that they shouldn't have been trusting in the first place did. But the government there is not having it this time. CBS News with video. New security video released in Philadelphia shootings. Yes, they're just looking for bread to go and feed their families. And now we go to CBS Live, unfortunately. From Fox 29, Philadelphia looting, officials say more charges imminent as videos depict nights of chaos. From Fox 29 staff. Nearly a week after the two-day crime spree destroyed several stores and terrorized residents, the city's law enforcement says the investigation is far from over. In a Monday morning press conference, Philadelphia DA Larry Krasner announced the city charged a total of 67 adults and 5 juveniles for crimes related to the looting spree. Now, if this was a Republican president, the question there is, would they be doing the same charges? Or do they have to show law and order and control because Mr. Biden is the president and he doesn't have control of his own bowels, much less anything else? Charges for suspected looters include burglary, conspiracy, mischief, and at least one weapons charge after 2 firearms were recovered throughout the investigation. According to Krasner, the city can expect more updates in the coming days as they review more video footage from the 2 nights. Again, they were doing this stuff on live TV in front of the news cameras, and we didn't see charges like this during the St. George riots. There is a political bent to this, and this is, by the way, in one of the cities that was the target of the St. George riots. And I'm glad. I don't give the government credit very often. But these people are terrorizing private citizens in their own neighborhood. Not to mention the fact that when you get organized riots like this, you've got other people that are coming from around the country who are coming to take part in this because, hey, my free stuff. Boomboxer says, was it them again, Yogi? Yes, boo-boo, it was them again. It's always them. I know where you were going with that. That might have gone over the algorithm's head. Alright. The last topic, of course, is those who cannot win. CNN giving us takeaways from the second Republican presidential debate, which, if you are a member of this channel, you sat and watched with me. But over on Rumble because, you know, you can't really put that out on YouTube. The second 2024 primary debate ended just as it began, with President Trump, who hasn't yet appeared alongside the rivals on stage as the party's dominant frontrunner. Nikki Haley unloaded on Vivek Ramaswamy. Honestly, every time I hear you, I feel a little bit dumber for what you say, she said to him at one point, which is how I feel listening to Nikki Haley. 2 candidates criticized Trump's absence as well. Florida man Ron DeSantis said he was missing in action. Chris Christie could not wait to scream, "Hey, I want to vote Donald Trump off the island." They told him, and that was the stupidest thing at the end of that thing. Hey, of all the people that are up here on the stage, who would you want to vote off the island? And 6 people came up and said, we can't do that. That is against decorum. That is horrible for us to do. Meanwhile, Chris Christie is sitting there furiously with a pen in his hand scribbling, Donald Trump, Donald Trump, Donald Trump, Donald Trump, Donald Trump. Trump's safe approach appears to pay off. Trump might have played it safe by skipping the debates and taking running as an incumbent approach to the 2024 primary. It's hard to see, though, how he would play a significant price in the eyes of the party's voters, missing Wednesday night's messy engagement to instead address current and former union members outside of Detroit, which was a fantastic idea of him, by the way. His rivals took a few shots at him. DeSantis knocked him for deficit spending. I've knocked him for that too, so why the hell am I agreeing with Ron DeSantis? Christie mocked him during the night's early moments, calling him Donald Duck for skipping the debate, and then in his final comments saying he would vote Trump off the GOP island. Yeah, he couldn't write that name fast enough. And like I said when we were in one of the breaks for that, I will tell you off the bat, that was probably the smartest thing for Trump to do, was to skip that debate. Not because he doesn't have a record to defend, he does. Not because it wouldn't be entertaining to see him remind Chris Christie of the fact that he has his own orbit. It would. But he is in a situation, again, and I will remind you, of course, where the judge is micromanaging every single interaction that he has with anybody who might be tangentially involved with the January 6th case or the documents case or the Stormy Daniels case, and waiting, drooling, ready to say, I'm putting you in jail because you intimidated Mike Pence or Chris Christie or Ron DeSantis or anybody else with that, for that matter. If I was his lawyer, I would say, I want you to campaign, but you're not getting anywhere near that stage. That is the smartest thing for him to do, is stay away from that stage. For people to come out here knowing that the only long shot chance they have at the presidency is for Trump to go to jail. To come out here and try to goad him into name calling and intimidating people. A messy 2 hours, the second primary debate was beset by interruptions, crosstalk, and protracted squabbles between the candidates and moderators over speaking time, plus Doug Burgum not getting any questions. Mogwai says Pence can't be intimidated. He pumps his own gas. And the only thing I could think of when that popped up was hearing, I don't know which one of the Sprouse boys it was. By the way, if you didn't know that the Sprouse kids were the ones who played Julian and Big Daddy, sorry, spoiler alert. But one of the Sprouse kids saying, I wipe my own ass. That's the only thing I could think of when Mogwai says Pence pumps his own gas. That one I can't do, boomboxes. It's funny, but I can't do that one on YouTube. I know where you're going with it. It's tough for viewers trying to make sense of it all, but even worse for these candidates as they attempt to stand out as viable alternatives to the absentee Trump. They're not. Further complicating the matter, some of the highest polling candidates after Trump, DeSantis and Haley, whom CNN's trying to astroturf, were among those least willing to dive into the muck, especially during the crucial first hour. Moderators repeatedly tried to clear the road for Florida man, at least the beginning, but he was all but absent from the proceedings for the first 15 minutes, which again was probably the smartest thing for him to do. Stand back and let these morons go after each other. Now, and I had a lot of opinions on the debate too. I noticed full out that CNN was doing everything that they could to try to spark a feud between Tim Scott and Nikki Haley for ratings. And I'm sorry, not CNN, Fox News. For ratings. Because there's no reason for the two of them to be feuding otherwise, because they're also rans. They have no shot. And yes, the smartest thing to do, and part of the reason that I think a lot more people are paying attention to Doug Burgum than they were before the first debate when nobody knew who Doug Burgum was, eyebrows Doug Burgum, is the fact that both he and DeSantis kind of stood back and let everyone else dive into the mud and try to out-Trump Trump. Palmetto pummeling all night. Scott seemed to like he was looking for a fight with someone, and he finally got that when he set his sights on fellow South Carolina. No, that's not what happened. And that is a bald-faced lie from CNN. No, the moderators were pushing the two of them into each other all night. So, and the candidates pile on Ramaswamy too. Some of the candidates on stage didn't want to have a repeat of the first debate, in which Ramaswamy managed to stand out as a formidable debater and showman. Early in Wednesday's debate, Scott went after the tech entrepreneur, saying his business record, including ties to the CCP and money going to Hunter Biden. That visibly annoyed Ramaswamy shifted gears from praising all the other candidates on stage to defending his own business record, which was where he started losing. But Scott and Ramaswamy ended up talking all over each other. A little later, Pence began an answer with a knock on Ramaswamy, saying, "I'm glad Vivek pulled his business deal in China," at another point after Ramaswamy had responded to a question about the use of TikTok. Haley jumped in, saying, "Every time I hear you, I get a little bit dumber from what you say," and then going on to say, "We can't trust you, we can't trust you." Well, Nikki Haley, I can't trust you either, so that goes both ways. As far as TikTok goes, Ramaswamy is actually right on that. I mean, TikTok is garbage. And to use it for something on a device that's actually going to have secrets somewhere, you probably shouldn't do that. But for your average Gen Zer who's sitting here watching stupid short videos and just like I see people at work doing all the time, it's not really that big of a deal. I broke down and got a TikTok, but partially it's because a friend does live streaming on there, and I wanted to support her because she is sometimes among you guys out here. She does support me, even though she's silent about it, because we do stand very different on political ideas. I've never sat down and watched any of these stupid short videos, though. They rot your brain. And I've seen the short videos on Instagram. I don't like them there either. So that was your debate, and it was a crap show. But one thing coming off of this, and they're trying to narrow out the field. If somebody is going to stand up to Trump, they're going to have to stop splitting the vote against 8 other also-rans. Ramaswamy campaign seeks to cut number of candidates in next GOP debate. Well, the only people that should be up there, honestly, are Burgum, DeSantis, and Ramaswamy, and maybe Pence. Not necessarily as somebody who's a viable candidate, but somebody who can run damage against the PAC leader. Because he was in the admin. There should be 4 people on the stage next time. On day 1, I will use this pen was so bad. Yes, it was. That was so cringe. I remember at the debate, I asked if you could die from cringe. That was a legitimate question. Adam Wren says Vivek's campaign is pushing the Republican Party to change the qualifying and debate format rules for the upcoming presidential debate in Miami on November 8th, calling for only the top 4 polling candidates besides Trump to participate and asking for a single moderator, according to a campaign memo obtained by Politico. The third debate will be held on November 8th in Miami, and Trump's rival campaigns face the most difficult qualifying threshold yet. Candidates need to have 70,000 individual donors and hit 4% in either 2 national polls or on 1 national poll and 2 polls from separate early states. Well, that actually is going to take most of that field out, and unfortunately Burgum is going to be one of them. In the Sunday evening letter, Ramaswamy's campaign CEO Ben Yoho wrote to Republican Chair Ronna McDaniel that against the backdrop of a chaotic second debate and the reality of a frontrunner who has declined to participate, we respectfully call on the RNC to revise its approach so that Republican voters can focus on serious candidates who have a viable path to beating Joe Biden or whomever the Democrats put up to replace him, which, by the way, was nobody on that stage. With 7 candidates on the stage, the second debate last week in Simi Valley saw Fox Business's 2 moderators alongside Univision struggle to control the debate at times, with multiple candidates interrupting one another, which again was fueled on by the moderators for ratings. Mogwai says the Burgum campaign might die, but his eyebrows will carry on. Will carry on. That might be my lyrics for next week. So that is your news for the week. Actually, I have to look at the calendar here. I'm embarrassed. I should have this prepared. For the week of September 26th to October 3rd, And we're going to roll out on some things that are a little bit fun at the end here, as we always do. Instead of just going news all the time. I've decided that until we finish out the rules of acquisition, that is going to be a staple of every week's show. But we're also going to do things I like and things that I hate. So on to the rules of acquisition. We are still a long way down this list. I want to finish out this list. Where did we even leave off? I don't remember. Oh, we ended on the 217th rule of acquisition. You can't free a fish from water. That's what we ended on. So now we move on. That's part of the danger of going from a month away. We move on to the 218th rule of acquisition. Sometimes what you get for free costs entirely too much. Man, being a car guy, I can tell you a lot about that. Now, this is not from an episode or a novel. This is actually from a Malibu Comics book focusing on DS9, Baby on Board. So let's parse that out for just a bit here. Sometimes what you get for free costs entirely too much. Had this happen before. Hey, I know you can do great things with this thing here. I got this car here. I can't accept any money for it. At which point you actually have to turn around and give money for it anyway. Because otherwise you have to pay the gift tax, and that's expensive. But you get it for free or for $1, for whatever it is that you give to the person in order to come back out and avoid the government's crackdown on that. Oh, right there, first off, if you get it for free, then you have to go pay the government for the pleasure of getting a car from somebody else and changing the title. And gift tax is not cheap. It is absolutely not, especially on a titleable object. They will get their money no matter how they come back out to get it, because they figure if you have enough money to go and give away a car, even if it's on 4 flat tires, it doesn't run, all the windows are busted out, and a host of other things like that, then you've got the money to go pay the government. So there's that aspect to it. But, I mean, what do you go back and put into it? If you get a house for free or any shelter for free, what do you have to do to keep it up and around you to make sure you can still crap indoors or cook or anything else like that? Sometimes you can do things really good for free. And I mean, I just got a new bed. That was one of the things I did with my off time is I bought a new bed. I set it up. I'd been sleeping on 16 half pallets for years. And I just finally decided it's time to get a real bed, and I got a real bed, and I like it. It feels fantastic. It actually feels great to have an even sleep, because having 4 stacks of pallets sometimes gets a little bit uneven. So all of that feels absolutely fantastic, but when I got rid of the pallets, I'm like, I can either throw these out in the dumpster, or hey, I can throw them on the Facebook Marketplace, and somebody did get them for free. I don't know who or what, because I basically said, you don't have to contact for me, just here's the address of where they're at, come and take them. And most of them disappeared within the next 48 hours. Sometimes you get cool stuff like that for free, but for the most part, anything you get for free is going to cost you more to get up and running properly than it is to actually enjoy the product that you got. Let's do a couple things I like and a couple of things that I hate. I actually want to go back earlier on into the articles we had here, because I wanted to grab a story off the side of here, because this goes on to things that I like as well. I know I didn't put it up on things I like and things that I hate before, but I saw it as we were going, and I wanted to make sure, because anytime a family is put back together, it makes me happy. Even if the kid ran away from home because there are horrible things going on. These are things that we can address and fix. But getting that family back together, I mean, if they're separated and the child gets sold into sex slavery or something stupid like that, then we can't reconcile, and often we can't even get the kid back. And somebody goes in to a horrible life of servitude. But if there's domestic issues or something else like that, and I don't know what any of the case is behind any of this, but even in the cases like that, we can get child services. We can fix these kinds of things. But freeing a kid from the horrors of kidnapping is a lot harder to do. So I'm very glad that this kid came home. Police identify suspect in custody for abduction of missing 9-year-old girl reunited with family. New York State officials and law enforcement have revealed the identity of the suspect in the abduction of a formerly missing 9-year-old girl from New York. I'm not going to read the name. State police reported missing 9-year-old Charlotte Sena had been located and in good health. Thank the Lord. Earlier Monday evening, and that a suspect in her disappearance had been taken into custody. The suspect and Sena were located after a ransom note was dropped off at the mailbox in the family's cabin at the State Park campsite, where they were staying at 4:20 a.m. Eastern Time on Monday. Law enforcement ran a search on fingerprints found on the letter. Through the New York State database, there was a successful match at 2:30 in the afternoon on a case from a DWI in Saratoga from 9 to 9 for Ross Jr. Police performed a dynamic entry, meaning they busted the fucking door down on the suspect's residence, where he lives with his mother, and took him into custody after a struggle, meaning they beat the shit out of him. Sena was found in a cupboard in the home and rescued. So, the person who did it is going to face justice. Probably not perfect justice, but is going to face justice. The kid is home. All is well. I love seeing stories like this. This is great. This is fantastic. Other thing that I like, what was going to be the regular thing that I like today, Final Fantasy X. If you follow my gaming streams, you know that I've been playing this for the last couple days. I did a stream a couple hours on Sunday. I did a couple hours yesterday of Final Fantasy X. I forgot how much fun that game is. It gets a little bit tedious towards the end, but even the grindy portions where they're just throwing enemy after you every 30 seconds are made a little bit more fun by the dynamic system of fighting, switching characters, switching weapons, and like they open it up while still being a full turn-based RPG. And then there's voice acting there to actually bring you into the story with and the conversational aspect of everything with this. So I want to take a moment and play the official trailer for Final Fantasy X. And I hope that you'll join me. I don't know what days are going to be best for this. I know Monday I got almost nothing for audience, so we might not do it on Mondays anymore, but I do want to do this 1 or 2 nights a week because I want to see the end of this game this time. I know I've started this game numerous times and I've never finished it. I want to see the end of it this time. I want to see the credits roll. I want to see that final scene that I've never seen before in my life. But the trailer for Final Fantasy X 2001's first edition from Square Enix onto the PS2. Let's watch.
This is your story.
All this started with sin.
I will defeat sin.
And again, if you slept on this in '02 when this came out, get yourself a copy of it on either the PS2 or you can get it on Steam, usually on sale here and there. Check this one out. I think you're going to like it. The story is fantastic, and I can say that even though I haven't been to the end. I've been close enough to the end to know what the story is like. The story is fantastic. The characters are actually engaging, something that Squeenix had a problem with for a long time. Just give it a try. It's very engaging. It's got that right amount of difficulty. The difficulty curve on this one is not vertical like other JRPGs are either. So give it a shot. Give it a look. Final Fantasy X. You might want to sleep on 10 too. I hear that one's a little bit iffy. But definitely go check out 10 if you like JRPGs, or even if you don't. It's still a great story. You're going to put some time into it. Definitely. And enjoy the story as it's laid out in front of you. Now let's do a couple things that I hate. Thing that I hate, number one. This is an old debate, but it's one that's seen prominence again over the past couple days. And the Deaf Libertarian, Nothing Gold Can Stay, points this one out here. It's becoming more common for physicians, especially pediatricians, to ask you if you keep guns in your home. Partially because if they ask the kids are just going to say, oh yeah, no, daddy loves guns and everything. The end goal, and I'm working on a script for a video for this one here, the end goal everywhere is to have a registry. Like, they're not first going to come back out here and attempt to go back and just confiscate the guns door to door. Because they're going to die if they do that. The first thing they're going to do is try to figure out where all the guns are and then figure out who has what kinds of guns so they can appropriately gauge the force. Because, I mean, for suburban Catherine out there who's got the 122 in the nightstand drawer in case somebody breaks into their suburban home, it's not going to take a full tactical SWAT team to come back out and confiscate. For the most part, suburban Catherine's just going to turn that gun over and say, we got to trust the government to keep us safe, and it'll be fine now because the government knows what's best for us. Whereas Redneck Pete is out there with a verifiable arsenal that's probably going to be out surrounded, have MRAPs and helicopters and everything else out there. But the first thing they need to do is figure out how many guns are in what. And yes, they're going to go with the physician's office, the children's office. And for those of us who are of an age of reason, we're going to come out and say, I'm sorry, doc, that's none of your business. And probably go out and find another doctor. But from the mouths of babes, they say, they'll get the kids to, in a position of power that the kid is supposed to trust. Now, I don't know what laws are out there for this yet, or what they're trying to ram through, or what's been passed and what hasn't, but do keep in mind, ask your kids, especially if they're alone with the doctor, what is the doctor said. I mean, you should be asking that anyway, because, well, power dynamic rape is real. It's a real thing, so you should be knowing what's going on in the office to begin with. And yes, you shouldn't be afraid to ask your kids, hey, did the doc ask you about guns or anything else like that? Especially if you have them. It's not the government's business what you have. It never has been. And the last thing that I hate, coming to us from the Daily Mail, you guys know how I feel about suicide, but I don't think that that's what this was either. Daily Mail reporting Wells Fargo executive Greg Beckett jumped to his death from the bank's Delaware offices, as families said he'd been stressed about working, taking meetings as late as 11 p.m. Now, this article was written and last edited on September 30th, this past Saturday, but this actually happened all the way back in January of this year. Let's read. A 46-year-old bank executive took his own life, leaving his family struggling to comprehend what had driven him to take such a drastic action. Greg Beckett from Bridgeport had been working at the headquarters of Wells Fargo in Wilmington when he jumped from the office boardroom on the 14th floor in January of this year. The fact that he left no suicide note nor showed any signs of distress in the days, weeks, and months before his death only worsened the agony for his friends and coworkers he left behind. Greg had been responsible for Wells Fargo's internal controls aimed at safeguarding the bank from risks, but his workload had steadily increased, leading to longer hours and increased stress. Or he was banging a secretary, and her husband found out, and he got pushed. I don't believe that this was a suicide. Especially with it being in Wilmington at a bank. Come on. This is the center of a lot of finances for a lot of people, and a big bank that a lot of big financiers have money in. And again, there's no note, there's no signs of distress, so either everybody that cared about this guy didn't give a damn, which I understand happens. It happened to me. It's part of the reason I don't use the Boomer book anymore, is because, well, when I got to that point, and it was noticeable, nobody reached out, called, checked on me, or anything. There are people who live lives like that, but this guy's got a wife and kids and everything else at home. I'm going to say, and I'm not going to point a finger at anybody, partially because I am not suicidal myself. But I don't think Greg Beckett's killer was Greg Beckett. Just looking at this from the outside, especially again being in Wilmington of all places, at one of the biggest banks in this country, I have questions. I know that's what not Boombox, is what Mogwai likes to point out, that I love to say so much, but I have questions about this one. And that's all that I have to say about that. And we're done. We're out a little bit early, but that's fine. We'll get some dinner a little bit early here. Reminder, of course, as we're wrapping up here, I'll check in with the chat once a little bit more. Nothing more on the Rumble side, but thank you guys for watching and making Rumble the exciting place to be. Into also agreeing with me, I've got some doubts also, very, very weird. But reminder, this is, as of right now, no longer a daily show. There may be some things changing in my future that could change this back into a daily show, but as of right now, we are no longer at a daily show status. We are going to be doing weekly, so I will say this. Organizing a weekly show is a lot easier than organizing a daily show, because I always felt so self-conscious about repeating news stories. But they were the big news story over and over and over again, day in and day out. That's part of what burned me out off of this. But doing this on a weekly show is like, boom, okay, we've got a topic. Boom, we've got a topic. We've got a topic. So we'll be back here on Tuesday night next week, 6 p.m. Central Time. Tuesday's going to be our night, I think. It's the reason I did video game streams on Tuesday while I was taking my break. And it's the reason that even before we got started, or even before I took my break, I said we're probably going to do Tuesday night. Tuesday seems to be the big night that I can draw an audience for the news. So we'll be back here 6 p.m. Central Time Tuesday night for more news, more headlines, and more contemporary. We will see what happens in the next 7 days. Definitely looking forward to that. Let's get some outro music up and head out of here for the night. Where's my outro music? I restarted my computer a few times since we've been back here and friends again. So everything was closed. All right, so take care. Have a good night. If you're on Twitch, stick around. We're going to go find somebody playing a video game to raid because, well, we've been sitting and watching news for the last 2 hours. Let's do something to wind down. We will see you here next week for the news, for the headlines. Watch the X, rather, not the Twitter anymore, the X and the Discord. If you want to see when I'm going to be playing games, I'll be experimenting with a few nights here to see when it's going to work the best. As always, go check out Hello Brutiful's channel. That's twitch.tv/hbrutiful, BREWTIFUL, for Unfiltered Brew, the other show that I do on Thursday nights. That is at 8 p.m. Central Time. So come back and join me for that. Help Brew grow her channel as well. That's only on Twitch, so hope to see you there. And we'll see you next time for more news, more headlines, and more contemporary. And until then, I am Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary. Take care.